let me welcome everyone and we have a lot of visitors here tonight. We first will do an organizational meeting, and then we will switch over to our April combined meetings. So we have two meetings tonight. We'll take them sequentially. Ms. Luton, if you'll note the roll for the organization meeting, all school board members are present. Our first item of business is a resolution that the board accept, and I'm getting to it, sorry, that the board accept the results of the school board election that was held on April 3rd from the clerk of Greene County. I'll take a motion for that. Mrs. Twitty. Second. Mr. Lee. And we're voting just orally for this. We're just voting orally for this. We'll start with Mr. Lee.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. And the board will now adjourn to our organizational meeting, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Ritter.
Well, I could just take it from here.
Okay. The seat's kind of hot. So.
Stay where you are.
I want to congratulate those that the incumbents and those that won the board race on April the 3rd. We always excited about. I guess I can call this a new board, in a lot of ways. And so, on that note, we're going to have a selection of the board president. So, just to begin it, is there?
Got to swear him in.
Oh, got to swear him in first. I'm sorry, Mr. Struckhoff. I'm sorry. I know you've been waiting patiently. So why don't you come on up?
Have our winners please come up here.
Oh, I forgot about it.
Face this lovely audience.
The winners.
That would be fine. You're ready to take your oath. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Missouri. And I will faithfully and impartially. Discharge the duties of school director. In and for the school district of Springfield R12. Of Greene County, Missouri. To the best of my ability, so help me God. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
You guys are crazy. I don't believe you did this, but anyway, again, congratulations.
Could we introduce?
On behalf of the staff of Springfield Public Schools, we want to thank the board for their commitment as far as volunteering time. And in volunteering time, that means that you're taking time away from your families. And so we do have some family here today or this evening. So first of all, Mr. Hosmer, do you have anybody in the audience?
I think most of Mr. Renner's family came from me as well.
I see.
Thank you for coming.
And so if Mr. Renner's family would stand up, we'd like to recognize you and appreciate you all coming.
Norm.
And do you want to introduce them?
Yes, I would. They can sit down if they want to, because there's a lot. First of all, I want to introduce my wife. Like you said, when you run for the board, it's a volunteer job, but your family and your spouse all of a sudden somehow gets tied in with you. And I said I appreciate her conditional supports, not unconditional, because there are times when I come home frustrated and she says, "And you ran for the board, why?" It reminds me why I did that for 18 years, soon to be 21. And she and I are both Springfield Public School graduates. My 3 children are here, Lance, Liz, and Jill, who are all Springfield Public School graduates. Jill's spouse, Benjamin, is here. Liz's husband, Brent, is in the audience. My grandchildren, Cole, Lauren, and Carly, who are also at Springfield Public Schools at this point in time. Olivia, who is smart enough to be, but just not old enough yet to be in Springfield Public Schools at this point. And my sister's here, who is a Springfield Public School graduate from New Jersey. She's here visiting my parents and soon to move back and be a Springfield resident when she retires here. And last but not least, my parents, yeah,
Best part of you, Bruce.
who inspired me to do what I do. So I appreciate them all being here.
Thank you, and I met your parents, and by the way, you know, they're still really working hard to try to keep you in line, you know.
I know.
And that's what I've heard anyway. So,
That's what keeps them going.
yes. Mrs. Kellen, you have family here.
I do. Make them stand up. My husband Bruce is here, our oldest daughter Abby, our youngest daughter Emily, and our middle daughter Elizabeth is here with us in spirit. She's in college in Minnesota, so I thank them for their support and their love.
Great.
Could we take just a break so they could?
Right, I want to make a statement, if
Okay.
I may, on that. Of the 3 of you, of course, 2 of you are empty nesters. There's no family in the home anymore as far as that is concerned. And then we have one that has 3 of them that are just going to continue to challenge him. And really, they have a challenge more than he has a challenge. But either way, I want to congratulate and thank. If I could have your attention, I think we're going to go ahead and get started as far as organizational meeting. And the way we manage this, of course, is that I will be the one taking nominations as far as board president. And after that, the board president who is selected will then take over and take nominations for vice president, as well as appointing or assigning the secretary as well as the treasurer, along with the delegates, I believe, or is that later? I think that's later in the meeting. Okay, on that note, is there a nomination for board president? Mr. Lee?
Dr. Ritter, I'd like to nominate Dr. Tom Prater.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for board president?
I'd like
Mr. Renner?
to nominate Andy Hosmer.
Okay. And Mr. Hosmer? Any other nominations for board president? Mr. Hosmer?
I would nominate Chris Callen, and before I do, I'd like to also say a few words. Tonight, it's my prediction this board will re-elect Dr. Prater to another term as president by a 5-0 vote. We will then nominate and elect Chris Callen to the office of vice president by the same margin. I know this because the board's already made that decision. It was a decision I had no part in and will not intentionally have no part of tonight. It was a decision made by others and was made some time ago. Last year I was nominated as vice president. I lost to Ms. Twitty 5-2. I ran against Jean not because I thought she was not an appropriate choice for vice president, because I felt the board was throwing away years of precedent and tradition by having someone serve as vice president who did not intend to then serve the board as president. And that is exactly what happened. This year we break with tradition and precedent again by nominating and electing a board member for the position of vice president when that board member has already served as both vice president and president of the board. If memory serves, in 2009, this same board member reminded Mr. Renner of the precedent we are today throwing to the side of the road. I believe that statement was made when our current president was first nominated for vice president after having served only 1 year on the board. The precedent, to which Ms. Callen referred in 2009, being that all members were given the opportunity to serve as officers of the board before the board recirculated officers to the board. I dutifully followed all those precedents and that tradition until last year. I did that because I believe there was something to be said for letting all members serve the board as officers prior to recirculating board members for those positions. In my 6 years as a board member, I voted with the rest of the board for president and vice president because I understood that was the precedent and tradition this board had adhered to for many years before I was elected. Last year we broke from precedent. This year we throw precedent aside. This board often talks of the importance of good governance. We make a point of trying to be a high-performing board that respects the opinions of others, even if we may not agree with those opinions. We vote and then move on from those votes. I hope this board remembers that before you can expect respect, you must give respect. I will respect and abide by the decision this board will make tonight, even though I will not take part in it and wholeheartedly disagree with it. After we reorganize this board, we will get to work for the good of 24,000 students across the district.
Are there any other nominations?
I decline the nomination for president.
Okay. So the nomination for president has been declined by Ms. Cullen. Are there any other nominations for president? Since there are no more, since there are more than one nomination for board, I will go through and we will vote with each candidate. We have two candidates, and that is Dr. Prater as well as Andy Hosmer. Okay? So, for all those in favor of Dr. Prater as president of the board, indicate by roll call vote, I believe it is. Go ahead.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. So we have a five-member vote with 2 abstain that supported Dr. Prater. Now, those that are all in favor of Andy Hosmer as far as being president, please vote.
Nay.
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 No. Nay.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, so on that note, then, I want to congratulate Dr. Prater for being the board president with a 5 vote favor with a nay, with 2 abstain, and so congratulate you. Floor is yours.
I told you this seat was too hot to sit in. Is there a nomination for vice president of the board? Mrs. Twitty.
I'd like to nominate Chris Callen for vice president.
Nomination for Mrs. Callen. Are there any other nominations for vice president?
I'd like to nominate Andy Hosmer.
And a nomination for Mr. Hosmer. Are there any other nominations? So since there are 2 nominations, we'll take a vote for each nominee. All those we'll start with Mrs. Callen since she was nominated first. Mr. Lee.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Abstain.
That's a majority. I don't think we need to do any more votes. So congratulations to Mrs. Callen for your election to board vice president. Is there a nomination for treasurer of the board?
Nominate Mr. Chodes, please.
We have a nomination for Mr. Chodes for president of the board. Are there any other nominations?
Treasurer.
Treasurer. Whoa, that was almost good. No other nominations for treasurer. We'll vote on Mr. Chodes. And this is a 2-year term.
Right.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a nomination for secretary of the board?
Nominate Ms. Luton.
Nomination by Mrs. Twitty of Mrs. Luton for secretary of the board. And this will also be a 2-year term. She filled 1 year of Mrs. Roper's unexpired term last year. Are there any other nominations for secretary? Nominations are closed. We'll vote. Mr. Hosmer?
Aye.
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 Thank Thank you. We can adjourn the organizational meeting.
Dr. Prater,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to explain my vote for abstaining, and I really don't feel like, as a board member, I had the same information other board members had to make the decision and I think that's an important thing for all of us to have the same information when we're making decisions. And the second thing, I don't need to go into what Andy said about precedence, because that was, I think practice is important in a board, and I think if we're going to change practice, we should be doing that at the table and discuss that among the board members at the table if we feel like it's not going to be adhered to. And I think this board has done a good job knowing, and Mr. Lee knows with other boards in the state, there are some who keep some people too long as officers and things occur. And then there's others that change every year and they have no continuity. And I thought we thought through that extremely well and had a good process in place. And we allowed people who were on the board to, if they wanted to serve before we brought others back on. And I don't believe anybody on this board was here when I served even as an officer on this board. So I'm disappointed that we didn't continue to follow that process, and I'm also disappointed we didn't have the discussion at the table, because that, I think, would have been, I don't think the results would have been different, but I think it would have been an open discussion that would have been very healthy for us, and I think for us to continue to be healthy, that's what needs to take place.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. And I'll remind the board members that last year I said if we do need to talk about changing our board policy, that would need to come forward as an agenda item to change policy at a board meeting, and I received no requests from any board members. If you do want to put that on the agenda at some point in the future, please get me that information. We'll put it on the agenda.
I'll make that request today.
And research your board policies. They're on board docs. I think that meeting is adjourned. We can open our study session regular meeting. Roll call again. All board members are present. If you'll please stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of recognition tonight, a lot of guests with us that we're happy to recognize. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Ritter.
Several weeks ago, along with quite a few districts from the southwest, the western part of the state of Missouri, received the Distinction Award. And really, to be honest with you, from what I understand, this region gets the most awards, percentage-wise. Am I right, Mr. Renner? I think,
Yes.
Yes, I believe
Yes.
it's the case. And so we're considered a high-performing region, and it's nice for us to be a part of that. And it took 14. You have 14 different areas that you can qualify for as far as distinction is concerned, and we hit 13 of the 14. And so anyway, I want to congratulate the board. I want to congratulate our teachers, our staff, our students, our community on receiving the Distinction Award, which we received. And Ms. Cullen, you were there along with several of the cabinet. And so anyway, I want to present that to the board tonight. And what we do, by the way, is we keep track, and we have the list in a smaller plaque about this size in the hallway that lists the years that we received the award. So it's not that we throw this in the trash. We just put it back in the closet. And we have a listing, and so if anybody wants to check, they can see that there. So again, congratulations to the district and to everybody that participated in receiving this award and earning this award. Thank you.
Dr. Harrell.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. Thank you for letting me present again Mr. Dave Davis and his exceptional staff at HTV at Hillcrest High School. Now, Dave Davis, or Coach as the students call him, is not able to be with us this evening, but we do have two of his students, Miss Morgan Wilson and Miss Paige Moffus. I believe I'm saying that right, Paige. And, of course, Mr. Jay Rush, the building principal. We're recognizing HTV Magazine's student-produced TV program received its 7th STN Excellence Award for the best monthly broadcast in the nation. The honor was announced during the closing ceremony of the Student Television Network's annual convention in Dallas just last weekend. And so, with that, I will turn the microphone over to these ladies.
Like Dr. Harrell said, we are from Hillcrest, and we are a broadcast journalism group. And we sent in our 7th new show to Student Television Network, and we received an Excellence Award. This is the first that we've sent in this year, so we feel very honored to receive it, and we thank you so much for having us tonight.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Mr. Rush, if you'll pass our congratulations on to Coach.
Can I make one comment?
Mr. Lee.
2 weeks ago, I was in Italy seeing my daughter, and so we're doing a tourist thing. And a lady came up who's from the United States and said something. We started talking and said I was from Springfield. And she said,
Rush.
and she said, and she'd worked with, she knew Dave Davis, and she'd worked with him somewhere. And she said, oh yeah, that's, Hillcrest is there, isn't it? She says that is one of the most unbelievable programs. And she mentioned Central too, because she'd worked something with Central, as far as nationwide recognition on media of excellence and the standard of the rest of the country to do. And I mean, I didn't solicit it. I just ran into her and in Italy, and she had nothing but incredible things to say about Hillcrest and their program. And she was just crawling all over herself about Dave and what he brings and to the district and to the country, for that matter. So I had to pass that along.
Well, that's good. It's remarkable that we're the cradle of all this innovation right here in Springfield, and that we just got back from a trip to Hawaii where they did shows and are producing a magazine from Hawaii. But we ran into a 1984 Hillcrest graduate in O'Hare Airport, and he keeps up with what's going on at school, and he was talking about HTV at the time too. It's incredible what they do. I get to see it firsthand, sometimes from the raw product, sometimes the finished product, sometimes in between, but it's remarkable what they do on a monthly basis.
You're now worldwide.
Thank you.
Mr. Rush.
Yes.
Mr. Rush, I want to thank you for your years in the district and all the wonderful things you have done for our children, especially at Hillcrest, and we wish you well.
Well, it was a tough decision to make. I think it's the right time for me at this time. I had shoulder surgery a couple months ago, and I've got a little bit of a bad back, and physically, 60, 70 hours a week, probably not good for those two things, but I am looking forward to having some weekends back and some evenings and actually going to a ball game where I'm not have my head on a pivot the whole time. Yeah, and still hear the radio, that's right. But I appreciate the honor it has been to serve the district. It's been a privilege. I've accomplished things in my life that I never would have accomplished without being with Springfield Public Schools, and I do thank you guys for that too.
Thank you, and we turn you over to your wife.
Yeah. Oh my. That's not good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Hosmer.
Mr. Rush, before you leave, sorry, trying to leave, I'm sure. When we were running for school board, there was a forum, and one of the questions was, name 3 things that Springfield does well. And of course, I mentioned the wonderful things we see at this board table from all of our schools. And it is kind of amazing you see Mr. Davis here every other board meeting because he's won some other national award from Hillcrest. You see all our high schools just showing up here, and so, you know, I hope you understand that some amazing things going on in our schools, and for people to say we've got issues, we certainly do, but boy, there's some amazing things going on in each one of our high schools, and I can't think of a better thing in terms of what Mr. Davis is doing at Hillcrest, because he's here all the time, and it's not just he's won a Springfield award or a regional award. He's won a national award, and he's won an award that he's won it so many times that nobody else has ever done it, and that's pretty impressive. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope you pass that on to him.
Well, I will, and our students certainly will too. I'll just tell you one short little story. Then you got me back up here. When I was principal at Studi, we were getting some electrical work done there, and the contractor was coming in, and he sat down with me, and he says, "Well, how can I get into the classrooms?" And I was talking about, when the classroom's empty, you can go in. So he spent about 2 days mapping out the building for electrical. And at the end of the 2 days, I was standing there in the hallways. The kids were leaving, getting ready to go outside to monitor them outside. And he said, "Can I have a minute?" And I thought, oh, no, what are you going to complain about? I got you in there. We got you done. And he says, "I want to tell you what a remarkable job the teachers do and what goes on in the building that the public doesn't know about." And I said, "Just tell 10 other people and ask them to tell 10 other people."
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McKenna.
On that note, we get to recognize teachers.
Speaking of teachers.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to get to continue to celebrate with you tonight as we talk about the District's Teacher of the Year process, and specifically to introduce our finalists who they would make their way up. And while they do that, I'll just remind you that each year, and maybe for our audience members who aren't familiar with the process, the district does accept nominations annually for our Teacher of the Year, and we do select 5 finalists from that pool of nominations, and those are the people that you see before you. So I'll take just a moment to introduce each of them, tell you a little bit. Wherever you want to stand, you are the guest of honor. So I'll take a moment just to introduce each of them and tell you a little bit about them. And we'll begin in no particular order. We'll start here at this end with Jenny Green. Jenny Green is a 4th grade teacher at Weller Elementary School. She's been with the district and Weller for 7 years. Ms. Green says that it's her job to create happier, healthier, smarter, and more valuable citizens. She does this by teaching respect, building confidence, and by modeling empathy and kindness that we want to grow in our community. Our next finalist is Alicia Moore. Alicia is a communication arts teacher at Glendale High School. She's been with the district and Glendale for 6 years. Ms. Moore says that the reward for her work is the knowledge that students who have been in her class will feel a little more confident to take on the challenges of life, whether in their personal relationships or in their intellectual pursuits. Next in the middle, we have Alberta Smith. Alberta Smith is a vocal music teacher at Central High School. She's been with the district for 17 years and with Central for 11. Ms. Smith says that her approach to teaching isn't just about notes and rhythms, but she sees herself as a little more. Are you wanting me to hurry up? Is that what that was? You're directing me from just like you do the choirs. Sees herself as more than just a conductor. Rather, she sees herself as a life coach that uses music and performance to teach young people life lessons. Next is Gina Wyckoff. Gina is a gifted education teacher at Phelps Center. Gina has been with the district for 29 years and has been teaching gifted education for 20 of those years. Gina says that she is honored and humbled by the lifelong effects that teachers have, both in her life and in those teachers that she knows. Ms. Wyckoff says that she is honored to see the good work that her past students have done and how they have positively changed the world. And on the other end, we have Donita Cox. Donita is a communication arts teacher at Central High School. She has been with the district for 12 years and at Central that entire time. Ms. Cox has served her school community in a variety of ways, including her service through Cocoa Honors and Chocolate University in Tanzania, where she has assisted with several humanitarian projects. So please join me in congratulating our 5 finalists for Teacher of the Year. I wanted to give the opportunity. I think maybe there might be some family members with us. Gina, do you have someone?
Peter, my kid. He was a Bingham Weaver and Wings child and speech music. Thank you.
Congratulations. Any of the finalists have family with them? In spirit. Everyone's in spirit. All right. I'd also, before we let these folks sit down, I'd like to acknowledge our current teacher of the year, Julia Armstrong. She's over there. And it's always a pleasure to get to have our current teacher of the year a part of the selection process for next year's teacher of the year, and they get to convey what an experience that is to be a part of. So we'd like to be sure and thank her as well. And remind everyone that the Teacher Appreciation Banquet sponsored by the Foundation for Springfield Schools is April 16th, and that is where we will crown the selected teacher of the year for Springfield Schools. So one more round of applause as these folks take this.
Well, very impressive group of educators, all women this time, I noticed. And congratulations to each one of you, and we'll anxiously await the Teacher Appreciation Banquet Monday night. And don't feel like you have to stick around for the rest of the exciting stuff.
Didn't take long.
Yeah, no. Are there any modifications of the agenda? Good. I have a short report on the President's report. One of them was to remind you of the Teacher Appreciation Banquet on the 16th. That's already been done. The other was to congratulate our newly re-elected board members. As one of the shortest termers on the board, it's been educational for me to be with you all for my 4 years. I'd also like to ask Mr. Lee if he will take on a task for us. Clearly we've had a lot of discussion on the internal auditor position. I don't think anybody on the board has had as much experience with this kind of a position as Mr. Lee has, and so I've asked him if he would be the liaison from the board to the administrative staff in helping develop a reporting system for the internal auditor position. And as this process moves forward and candidates begin applying, and then can bring us updates and can bring us back a recommendation as to a good reporting system. So I appreciate in advance your work on that. Dr. Ritter.
I just want to mention one thing, and that's congratulations to the county. It's wonderful support there as far as 2-to-1 votes to support safety, and I really think that's a powerful thing. And we really appreciate that, because a lot of our issues that we get in the schools come off the streets. And really, in fact, in visiting with some of our leadership at the sites, it was on the rise this year, so the timing was just perfect, and I think it's going to help us immensely. So again, congratulations to the county, and a wonderful job in making that happen for us. So that's all I have at this time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Luton, do we have any public comments tonight? No public comments. And we have no informational items tonight. We can go on to action items for separate consideration, and because this is a combined meeting, we need to vote on these tonight. Mr. McKenna.
Good evening. Action item 8.01 is a resolution to recognize the Springfield National Education Association as the representative for purposes of collective bargaining for our clerical staff. You'll see here in the action item that we note October 31st, 2011, the State Board of Mediation for Missouri did certify the SNEA as the representative for that unit, and we do have a further detailed definition of the unit in board docs for your information, and we would ask for you to vote for the signature on that resolution tonight.
Any questions for Mr. McKenna? Ms. Callan.
So the Board of Mediation certified that, was there some discrepancy in terms of, it seems to me that the election was held a while ago.
Yeah,
so that's why I was a little
there
confused.
were several issues with the election. There was a challenge process by both of the parties, and there was an intervener in the election. So some legislative issues we had to wade through, and the Board of Mediation sort of adjudicated that for us and helped us through that, and that's the primary reason for our delay.
And they're able to do that for this bargaining unit, but do they have jurisdiction over the teachers?
Not in the same way, and that's the result of our legislative change with the independence decision.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I would listen for a motion on the recommendation that the board approve the attached resolution to recognize the SNEA as the certified representative of full-time and part-time clerical employees.
So moved.
Mr. Renner?
Second.
Mr. Lee? Thank you, Mr. McKenna. 8.02 Policy K1, Dr. Harrell.
Good evening again. Thanks, Parker. The board has received policy KI, public solicitations in the schools. We do currently have a policy KI. It has not been revised since 1995. And of course, as part of the transition we're working on with adoption of the MSBA policies or guidelines from them, this revision does reflect MSBA policy. This policy revision has been reviewed by the Office of Athletics and Activities, the Finance Department, Human Resources, Secondary Operations, and also by legal counsel. The recommended changes are shown in Attachment A, and then Attachment B would denote the policy that's fully revised. And this is coming to the board this evening for first reading.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Harrell? Mr. Hosmer?
Is this part of the fundraising effort in terms of the field?
This does help us align our efforts in that area, yes.
So that can be allowed on school property, is that correct?
So it's more clearly defined.
Any other questions? Ms. Cowan?
I know that this, I'm not sure if it's passed, but the state legislature is allowing advertising on school buses. Is this something? I'm sorry, I'm surprising you with that question. But,
No, you're fine. It actually is specified in there as legislation allows, and yes, there is legislation on that particular piece of it.
Right, it's passed the House, but it is not yet passed the Senate.
But this would this policy would cover that if
Yes.
we get to the point of considering. I mean, I don't know, but
Any other questions? Great. I would listen for a motion that we approve. Oh, first reading, so we don't vote tonight?
No, yes, we do.
Okay.
To accept the first reading.
I thought the same thing, yeah. That we approve revised policy K1, public solicitations, advertising in district facilities. Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Dr. Frederick, in a second?
second.
Mrs. Callan, thank you. I'll try to be more clear. Uh, 8.03, Dr. Ritter? Or me?
You,
Okay.
really, it's dealing with the delegate assembly.
We have several delegates to the Missouri School Board Assembly by virtue of the fact that Mr. Lee is the president-elect and that Mrs. Callan is the Springfield representative on the board. We need to select a delegate and an alternate to attend the annual meeting in September, and Mr. Renner has volunteered to be the delegate, and Dr. Frederick has volunteered to be the alternate, and I would propose a vote on that tonight. Mrs. Callan moved.
Second.
Mrs. Twitty. Thank you, and thank you both for your...
Dr. Prater, question just to make sure. With voting on this, that puts Ms. Callan as the Springfield rep on the MSBA board, is that correct?
I think we
She
did
did that
that
last month when I wasn't here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think she's already said.
Should have read the minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So we have good representation. Treasurer's report, Mr. Chodas, sorry.
Thank you. If you'll open up the attachment on board docs and go to page 2, you'll see the March Treasurer's report or financial statement. In March, property taxes were about $200,000 higher than they were last March. Sales taxes were about the same as they were last year. One thing I would like to point out is on the county revenue, We were waiting for one last payment, which was fines and forfeitures. That did come in March. So the year-to-date number you see there is essentially what we'll end the year with. So at least in county revenue, we're about $200,000 lower than budget, but I anticipate we'll make that up elsewhere. Expenditures continue to track with budget, and everything looks fine. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Chodes? Okay. I'd take a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Renner, and second by Mrs. Twitty.
Thank you.
There are 3 routine action items that we can approve in a motion, single motion, the minutes of last 2 meetings and the personnel. I would take a motion for that. Mrs. Twitty.
Second.
Mrs. Callen. Thank you very much. No general comments from the public, despite my plea, and Claudette's very well-written article about that. We scared him off, huh? Legislative report, Mr. Lee and Dr. Ritter.
It's just a lot of noise,
Yeah.
I may say. That's about it.
Yeah, and then obviously the tenure bill is still being talked about. Quite a bit of trying to expand it to 10 years instead of 5 years. I don't know that it will go anywhere, but there's a lot of talk. And they keep it on the burner, so I don't know of any other better way to keep our teachers on the hot seat than they keep talking about it. But I don't know that it will go anywhere, but they're rattling the sabers most of the time.
I think the efforts around the funding formula really kind of went south. David Pierce's bill went south, and so I do think that ultimately it's going to end up in DESE, that kind of, but the period on that. And so I do think legislatively nothing's going to happen there. May be wrong. Other than that, there is a bill trying to put some controls on the retirement system. I think, Mr. McKenna, you're probably aware of that. And that is trying to take the governance away from the people that are in charge of it and give it to other parties. And so I don't think that's getting any traction. Get any feel for that at all, Parker?
I think we're still developing a lot of opinions of that.
Okay. But that is, to me, an issue for staff, major issue for staff. So other than that, I think that's about it.
What about the school board?
Maybe in committee tomorrow.
It may be, yeah.
First thing, the Education Committee hears it in the morning, and we will have, I'm aware of 4 or 5 people will be testifying. So.
Against it? Who?
MSBA.
MASA.
MASA. I'm not sure if NEA.
I think MSTA.
MSTA is going to, was my understanding.
Also,
hopefully Scott Mars will be testifying on our behalf. But that's, at this point, that's all I know of so far.
The information I'm getting is that basically it doesn't feel like they're saying it's not getting much traction. So
was anybody contacted by Representative Leach on this board before she introduced that bill? I mean, I know I wasn't, but I was just curious.
Not before or since.
Yeah, I guess that's another question.
And I really think if she had done research or found out the answers to a lot of those questions were there are answers to those questions on why there wasn't 12 years and why that was changed. And one of the representatives from our party actually changed that to put us with it 99% of the school districts in the state, and that's where we are. And so, I mean, research would have shown the answers to all the questions that were there. So it just seemed kind of strange to me because the answers were there.
Seems to be a solution looking for a problem.
Yes.
Future issues. I don't have a thing on future issues. Any other board members or Dr. Ritter have any?
I don't know if this is future or other, but I never know the difference. When you do the budget, I know when we have bond issues, we have a whole list, and then we say, whoops, here's our cut point, and we still have all these projects to do. When you bring us a budget recommendation, I know there was probably a list and they didn't make the cuts. Have we seen that previously, or do we just see the administration's recommendation from that?
We are meeting ourselves to go over that list. When are we doing that? Next week? 24th. We, as a staff, because we know everything's going to be late because of the legislature, and we're waiting for the results from the collective bargaining and everything. So, no, we're going to have our priority list, and that's all coming to cabinet on the 24th. So, and every direct report from the cabinet is already gone through processes from the classroom, from the transportation driver, all the way up to that level, and that's where we're at right now. And so we will see the list as a cabinet.
But we don't see it. But then we as a board just see your final recommendations of what to fund as opposed to even all the things that were brought to the cabinet level.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I mean, because I really don't remember that we do.
No, we have done that several times when we had revenue to be able to have that conversation. But when it's in salary and there's no room in the budget, really it was mostly cutting. We really didn't have much to bring to the board over the last 2 to 3 years. So that's where it was different. But I know in the past, like 4 or 5 years ago, we did come in with a list. Not complete, but a list of recommendations.
I guess my whole thing is I don't know if it's beneficial or not, but it is beneficial for me on the bond issue to see we can fund this, and we still have all these things out there not done.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not sure, maybe other people don't see it the same way, but if it got to the cabinet level and then you have to kind of fight it out over which ones make it there, I would say if it made it to that level in any department, it's probably pretty much of a need rather than a want.
Oh, yeah.
And it might be beneficial. I'm not saying we need to change it, but to see that we still have all these unmet needs out there that that people feel like if they had them, we'd be doing a better job. And I think if we don't get them, then it's not seen. Then we just think we fulfilled the need somehow. And I think
it tells the community.
Yeah.
There's $6 million, $7 million of
That's about right.
Need. And so I agree with Mr. Renner. I'd like to see that list that gets to that point.
Sure.
And I think staff is working on the long-range
The facilities, yes, we're ready. We're moving on that as well.
We'll see that as we look
The list
forward.
you were talking about, we'll have that as far as the facilities are concerned as well.
What's the timetable for that? When we get the budget, it's going to be.
What do you think?
For the
Facilities plan.
Okay, well, the long-range facilities has kind of been split in two. We're looking at a shorter-term potential bond versus a true long-term facilities plan. So, our goal for the long-term facilities plan is to bring someone in with the expertise to help guide our team in developing that.
The timetable was last year until you got sidetracked with other
That's true, yeah, we're moving
Halftime.
up a year.
Great. Any other issues or future issues? Remember the financial operations report is there. We do need to vote to go into executive session to discuss legal, real estate, and personnel matters as provided in section 610, 021, 1, 2, 3, and 13 RSMO. I'll take a motion for that.
We're going to discuss all three of those?
Yes.
So moved.
Is that okay? Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Lee, Ms. Callan, and Mr. Lee. I almost took Mr. Hosmer's question as a motion. We are adjourned to executive session. Thank you very much.
Did we vote?
Oh, we did vote.